It's an exciting day today. Today is Dahlia Day. It's time that I got all of these planted out. I've got about 45 Dahlia plants here, and I'm planting these for my wedding flowers later this year. The majority of them are going to go in this bed, which is 3 meters long by about 2.2 meters wide, and I've got another area at the top of the plot where I've got a few more going as well. So I've already pretty much weeded this bed. We've had some good rain overnight, which means it's going to be perfect for planting directly into, and in it we're going to be planting these dahlias that I've grown from tubers inside my polytunnel, and they've grown along really nicely. I've even pinched them out as well, so we're going to start to see lots of gorgeous side shoots, which is going to give us even more flowers. But today I've got to get them in the ground, so there's going to be a lot of planting involved. But yes, I've already sort of spaced them out as I want them, which was quite a long process because I've got to think about the height and where I want them positioned, and also aesthetically how I want it to look as part of the allotment. So along the edge of the path up there, we've got the majority of the white flowering dahlias, varieties such as Petra's Wedding, My Love and White Aster. In the centre we've got all of the orange and copper colours such as Cornell Bronze. There's also Brown Sugar and Zundert Mystery Fox, and then along this side of the path we've got some of the dark varieties including La Recoleta and maybe a few Natal as well. The top section is going to be mostly the Café au Lait and a few others as well, but this is where I'm going to be concentrating most of my time today because it's going to take me quite a while. So yeah, the dahlias are nice and grown on. I usually get them in the ground about the 1st or 2nd week of June, so I'm a little bit later this year, and that's primarily because of the weather we've been having. At first it was really cold at night, so I've been keeping them in the tunnel, and then it started to get really hot in the day and very sunny, which, you know, you've got to acclimatise your plants before you take them out of a polytunnel and put them in open ground. You need to transition them. So they sat at the bottom of the plot on a table for about a week or so, just to acclimatise them because it has been seriously warm. But now's the time. We've got overcast skies. It's a little bit muggy if I'm honest, but it's a prime time now to get these in. It's not too late if you're sort of the mid-end of June as well to get them in. They're a late flowering plant, remember. You can't expect them to be flowering in June because they'll be flowering pretty much from about mid to late July all the way into November if we're lucky. So let's make a start and get them in the ground. So when I was spacing out these plants, I've gone for rows that are alternating. So there's a plant in between each other plant, if you see what I mean. And I've got how many rows? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows, and they're about 22 inches apart from centre to centre. Now, some people plant theirs much closer, some people go for like 12 inches, I'd say 18 minimum, up to like 23 inches because some varieties can get incredibly big. But these are freshly new tubers. They're going to get very big underground and they become very bushy plants as well. So do bear that in mind. Try not to plant them too close together because otherwise you restrict airflow, which encourages diseases and pests, and you want to keep a nice bit of breeze through them. The one thing I haven't actually catered for is a pathway for me to get through to do a bit of maintenance as they get bigger. But I may shuffle them slightly closer together that way and that way. We'll see. So to start with, we've got White Aster going in first, and I'm going to be digging about 30 centimetres deep, but I'm going to be backfilling that with some nice organic matter. So about spade's depth. So now I've dug a fairly deep hole. I'm just going to pop in a couple of scoops of peat-free multi-purpose compost. That's just going to help boost the nutrients and the water retention, because although dahlias like to be warm, they like to have free draining soil, they also like a lot of nutrients to provide all those flowers for such a long time. So this will just give my soil a little bit of a boost. So first one in the ground is going to be My Love. And you want the tuber itself to be underground, but I'm probably only planting it just below the soil level of where it was in its pot. But it is sometimes beneficial to go a little bit deeper as our summers are starting to get much drier. So I'm just going to bring all that soil back around the plant and then firm it in a little with my hands. And then you want to add a label. I haven't prepared mine just yet, but I'll do that now, so you know which one's which, because until it starts flowering you won't have any idea. Another way that you can preserve all of the moisture in your soil is to mulch the surface of your soil, but I wouldn't do that until after you've finished planting all of your dahlias and given them a really good soak. Here in the UK, a good mulch to use is actually compost. I know a lot of people in the States and elsewhere use straw as a mulch. Please don't do that if you're in the UK, because straw is loved by slugs and slugs love to eat dahlias. So using a mulch will really help to retain all of that moisture during a hot summer. I'm very lucky to have very good soil over here. It's quite humus rich and free draining, so it's not too heavy. That's the first 2 in, only 43 to go. You want to plant your dahlias where they get a lot of sunshine. They need at least 6 hours of sunshine to thrive, and the more sun you give them, the more flowers you will get. Remember that dahlias originate from Mexico, so that just gives you an idea of the conditions that they like. I have never grown quite this many dahlias before. This is pretty large scale for an allotment garden, but you know, my excuse is that I am getting married and I'm doing my own flowers, which is going to be quite a challenge when it comes to deadheading all of these. But I'm enjoying the ride so far and having so much fun. It's going to be a few weeks yet until they even think about blooming, but I just can't wait to see this entire patch in colour. And with the straw flowers above it, it's going to look absolutely amazing. And the reason I've planted them at this section is because they get a little bit more moisture than at the top section. You may have noticed that my plot is slightly sloped down a hill, so they'll get more moisture in theory at this end than they would at the top, which is where I've actually got the straw flowers growing, which can cope drier conditions much better. Well, that's now the last dahlia for this bed, but we've still got about 10 more to plant up at the very top of the allotment where I've got my raised borders. So the last of them will be going there, and then we will look at how I'm going to support these with some stakes and some netting as well. So let's carry on. So this area here is where I'm going to plant the last of the dahlias. I've got 2 teardrop shaped raised beds, and I'm going to pop about 5 in each. And the varieties up here, this entire bed is going to be Cafe au lait. This one is a bit more mixed. It's got Cafe au lait Supreme, which is a pure white Cafe au lait, with Ludwig Helfert, so a few other orange ones, cactus dahlias as well. This area of the allotment is quite the focal point, because if I take any photos, it's always right at the back here next to my polytunnel, and also when I'm inside the polytunnel and I look out, it's the first thing I see. So I really do love having quite a statement feature up here, and for the last 4 years or more it has been the dahlias, and they do really well here, but being a raised bed, they do dry out a little bit. And the edging is the local stone in Nottingham. It's the Bulwell stone, which is like a sandstone that I basically recycled from other people's gardens. When you're growing dahlias, it's really important that you stake them. And in a normal year, I kind of wing it, and I don't put too much effort in my staking, because I pinch out the dahlias, which makes them much more resistant to the winds. It keeps them nice and stocky. But because I'm growing so many, and because they're such an important crop essentially for me this year, I need to stake them very well. So I'm using a mixture of techniques here. I've got some small stakes which I'm hammering into the ground, and then I'm using this jute biodegradable natural netting that is 2 meters wide, and the hole size is 15 centimeters, with the idea being that the dahlias will grow through the netting, and I can either raise the netting as they grow or double it over, so I've got 2 layers, and this helps prevent wind damage. It keeps them all together so they sort of sway and rock in the wind together rather than damage and snap essentially. If you're growing dahlias on a much smaller scale than I am right now, you can stake them on a much simpler method by just putting a couple of stakes or bits of branch, which is what I used to do, around each tuber. Obviously be careful not to hammer it through the tuber itself, and then just wrap some twine around, so you're essentially making a small little cage for your dahlia. Or what I'm doing up here is I'm using a few stakes and just making a bit of an outside barrier just to prevent that wind from damaging them, because at the top of the plot it does get a little bit windier, and especially if I've got tall varieties in here, and Cafe au lait, which is a very heavy flower, you know, they do need some support. So don't take this step for granted, because you will kick yourself if you have a summer storm and find that they've all collapsed on the floor. Well, I'm feeling pretty tired now, but that's all 45-ish dahlias planted and also supported as well. The only thing I've realised about this netting is that because it comes as one 2 metre length altogether, I don't have a pathway running through the middle now, which means to get to the middle I'm just going to have to lean over when I'm doing my deadheading, which may not be too much of a problem because I think I can just about reach from each side of the bed. It just means that centre bed is going to be a little bit tricky to maintain. All that's left to do now is to give everything a really good watering in. And as for the staking and the netting, well, I can either make a second layer of that as they grow, so they've got 2 layers of support, or I can just raise it up as the plants grow. So yes, there's not much to do now other than water them, and then further down the line I may be giving them a liquid feed of seaweed, which we'll talk about as we go further on through the season. But it's just a very relieving kind of feeling to know that all the dahlias are now in, and I'm on track to have wedding bouquets bouncing with massive dahlia flowers. Very exciting. Thanks a lot for joining me today, and I'll see you real soon.